I'm too very proud of taking part of this. And in itself, I want to congratulate the team of iBridges that have been turning this like all entrepreneurs do, pivoting, carrying it through, and probably you will discover that it will be one of the best iBridges ever. And with me, I will have a fantastic group of experienced entrepreneurs, and we will do it like this. They will have 5 minutes introduction speech each, and then we will pool them all together to have an interactive exchange. And for all your audience, we are happy to get your questions, so keep on posting while you find something, and I will do my best to take them all in. Before I introduce the first speaker, I may say a few words who I am, so you can frame it in from where I'm coming. I'm Niklas. I'm in my studio in Stockholm. It's in the north of Europe. I'm a founder and CEO, as Jasmine said, and owner of Founders Alliance, which is a worldwide collaborative forum of experienced large-scale founders. I am also unemployable, and I'm also obsessed by the value that entrepreneurs create for the benefit of our society. I'm a father of 3, and my wife, I'm still lucky that you want to hang with me after 12 years of marriage. And I've dedicated my professional life to serve founders of scale to build sustainable companies and inject value for the benefit of our whole society. And I'm so proud of have been following and taking part of iBridges the last 6 years. Before our panel starts, I give you some data. I was seeing in a trustworthy source that only in Europe we have 800,000 startups in Europe, and it's booming across the globe. And it's part of the liberalization of people and technology platforms, like Cameron said. A startup is defined as the early stage of operation, and it's founded by one or several entrepreneurs. These companies generally start with high costs and limited revenue, while they also need capital. We have heard widely accepted terms like unicorns. Also, some people talk about dragons, and it's referring to the financial value of a company. In this panel, now we will explore what entrepreneurship means for them, who will prevail and later thrive, and some hands-on self-experiences of our panelists based on decades of mistakes, failures, and also successes, both as founders and owners and leaders in many types of different companies. And our only mission in this panel is to give you some energy and insights that you can use in your further corporate creation that's starting Monday morning. I believe truly that we are in the era, and maybe this drastic, tough situation has created it, the era of entrepreneurs, individuals like you that drive your companies to take risks beyond the financials, pivot, work hard, focused. We can help the whole society, and you're needed now. You're no nice to have anymore. We need you to pivot, to get out on the other side. And we have a chance now to rebuild our society to do something greater. Yes, I'm thereby extremely honored and happy to introduce our first speaker. May we switch on Shahrazadeh. Hello, Shahrazadeh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Hello. Wonderful being here.
Wonderful. Shahrazadeh is one of Europe's absolute authorities in media and journalism. She's also the CEO of a Politico headquartered in Brussels with 180 employees, I think.
170, but good for 180. Soon 180.
But foremost, she was already forming her first company when she was 23 years old. And she was also the entrepreneur behind Eurovoice, which was acquired in 2015 by Axel Springer and Politico, as well as has conducted some investments in startup, and she's originating from Iran. Most welcome.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here.
I think I'm asking a couple of questions if it's okay.
Sure.
When we talked for a couple of weeks ago, you said you don't really like the feeling of the subject. Why is that? Tell us.
No, when I received the panel title, I was a little bit intrigued. I was a little bit upset. I'm like, well, the idea that I think it's how to adapt your business model to the new post-COVID world. Well, hopefully you have a business model. I sometimes am worried that now we're going to maybe blame COVID for many startups for not having had a solid business model, because we were in this era of just thinking it's all about raising capital, having an idea, and we've only been hit, and maybe many startups have been hit with the reality, but that reality actually would have hit them sooner or later. So the solidity of their business model should honestly be COVID proof. So I guess that's why that was the key reason.
Thank you. We'll get back to that. What is your definition and the role of an entrepreneur in our society? What would you say in your mind?
I think it's about passion, about a project that they're passionate about. It's not about bankers, lawyers, investment funds, getting funds, having an exit strategy and trying to become, I hope that the coming generation will be less cheated into this idea of everyone's an entrepreneur. And I think our panelists right before, there is the wannabe entrepreneurs and there's real entrepreneurs. I do think this coming generation in the past 20 years, people are just much more resilient, much more, there's a freedom of doing what you want. That doesn't make everyone an entrepreneur. It's the passion of building.
And tell us a little bit about your background and what key things can you say about that as a leader and an entrepreneur that have been a benefit or a learning thing for you in your background?
I think in my personal background, and wonderful to be with the Iranian community here, I think we've learned to be resilient. But it's also about, you always have the choice. I really don't like it when in my company or in my environment, someone tells me, well, I didn't have the choice. You always have the choice. And choosing is giving up. Choosing is taking a risk. So that has definitely been, for me, a guideline very important throughout my career, that you always have the choice and you're the only one who will impact your future. No one else will impact it. The outside events will, but at that moment, you can still impact your own future.
You mentioned something about what your grandmother said to you when there was crisis, and what did she say?
No, my mother, she always says, yes, no, my mother, she always says there is an end to everything bad. So you just have to, and that's a great way of just going through life. You know, everything ends, everything bad ends. Some good things also end, by the way, but let's not emphasize on that. But of course, moments like the one we're living, moments where you're missing cash in your moments where the customers are unhappy, moments where your broadband falls, everything ends. It can take a year, it can take a week, it can take a couple of years, but they always end.
What is your key success factor when you're defining successful large-scale entrepreneurship? What is it that you come to think of then?
I actually think it's about keeping a purpose, a sense of what you're doing. And it's really key, and I think some of the large startups, which they are no longer startups, which are the largest tech companies, they have maybe at times lost their purpose, that purpose that actually is so important for the energy you need to launch your company. And the collaboration of the teamwork. I think we're totally underestimating, and you should never underestimate the importance of a teamwork and of the group of people who make it happen.
And what is your take on the COVID-19 time that we have now in respect to all of the entrepreneurs and startups that are listening now? What is your message?
I think, nothing probably more original than maybe everything we're reading and saying. It's been a fast forward. We basically, in 2 months, we've done a huge fast forward in the future of work, in the hybrid world of education, maybe in which we will be entering. The hybrid world of work will maybe we don't need 4 board, in-person boards. We can have only 3, Zoom boards and 1 in person. So I think it's really the fast forward aspect of entering much faster where we would have been in 5 years from today. And it's going to change consumption. It's going to change the way we will be doing certain things, yes.
And lastly, the role of media, as of your experience to us startups. What do you say about media's role in our life as entrepreneurs?
You must use the media, earned media, but not spend too much time, because media can make people go very high up and make them fall, right? But I do believe it also plays an important role, and also trusted media. I think that's a key. And during this crisis, all of the trusted media, as we say, or the brands that people trust, saw their page views increase tremendously all around the world in every country. And I think that is also a sign that when there is a crisis, people want to be able to trust. And that's probably the biggest role the media plays. And the entrepreneurs should be using those trusted medias.
Thank you so much, Sade, for the short introduction. You will be part of the exchange later as well. So we're coming back to you. And I'm so happy that already now I see that many of you have submitted questions. Let us do the introduction speeches, and then I will involve as many questions as I can. So now we have our second speaker. I'm also proud to have another person with almost my same name. He's called Niklas Bergman. Niklas, yeah, we see him there. Niklas is also an entrepreneur. He's from the west coast of Sweden, and he's by birth. He's an investor by accident and a futurologist by heart. He's coming from an industrial family company, founded and built, exited his own companies, invested in high-tech companies in areas like nanotechnology, computing, new materials and new media, art. And currently he has 15 direct and indirect investments. As well as he's a futurist, where technology is studying what technology is taking us as humans and our world. And he's the author of a book, which I actually have been studying as well, which is called Navigating the Tech Storm. Niklas, you don't need any questions from me, so I give you 5 minutes to present and share the best you can out of your experience. The word is yours.
Thank you. Just a few ideas about what we're actually doing here and where I come from, my perspective on things. So happy to be here. Hello, everyone. As Niklas introduced me, I'm entrepreneur. That's where I thrive. I really, really enjoy meeting with scientists, being in the lab, all these different sort of weird things that you encounter while trying to understand what's happening around you in technology. Also very interesting to hear about all these the failures that we've heard about earlier today here. This is my 4th recession, so I've seen my fair share of epic failures, I can tell you that. But that's for another time. Right now we're in a period where we see a lot of focus on, of course, the COVID pandemic. We are challenged about that, and from like a business perspective, I'm also very curious about how we should deal with that. So trying to understand this, trying to look forward, trying to put a perspective into this. For me, in my own companies, when I advise other companies or governments on this, for me, it's a 3-way perspective, and you need to have these 3 things in your mindset all the time. Actually, it's difficult, but that's what separates the really good entrepreneurs and leaders from the rest. And you need to, of course, to have a tactical perspective, because tactics today, it changes by the minute or by the hour or by the week. Actually, you have to see how should we cope with this crisis at this moment. But then, of course, you need to see some kind of strategic perspective as well. Once we're through this, what do we have to change? Do we have to change? Can we go back to normal? And how should we relate to that? And then, of course, the visionary perspective. The vision we had when we started the company, is it still valid? Can we still use it? How do we take this forward? How do we develop and change our vision of where we're heading during this period, or once we're through this this immediate crisis. So for me, that is, and it also has to do with the fact that this is a time perspective. It's really, really essential to understand the timing in this, because you see situations where the tactical perspective for a company was maybe 6 to 18, 24 months in the past. Now it's maybe 6 to 8 weeks. It's really, really shortened in that time frame right now. So what we need to do here is try to, and that's from my perspective, being very much into technology, trying to understand what technology is taking us, realizing that society is not ready for what's out there when it comes to if that's important. The important thing is from trying to understand how we should use these technologies. And that is definitely a challenge because there's no way you can just ignore this and think that everything is going to be fine. You need to focus. You need to understand what's happening in the world around you when it comes to social challenges, the environment, globalization, but then of course also technology. For me, you need to embrace technology. You need to understand how it works. You need to understand how it works from a couple of different perspectives. So you need to be curious, but at the same time as you need to be curious about what's around you, what's happening in technology, in society. I think you also need to be a bit skeptical, because do not take everything for granted. Just don't listen to all the experts around you that are trying to sell you things. Be curious, open-minded, but form your own opinions about these things. And also, it's a three-way perspective here. You need to understand the competition, what's happening in the industry, the power change in your value chain in your industry, for example. You need to understand how your customers react to new situations. Can you introduce some new services or products based on a new innovation that you see in another industry, for example? And then third perspective of this is, of course, the company perspective. Now we see a situation where a lot of work is being done online, Zoom meetings instead of physical meetings, for example. And how will that change your company, the way you work in the short term? And how will that change in the long term, of course? Also from this, I mean, for me, trying to meet with a lot of scientists, innovators, entrepreneurs, other investors, politicians, every once in a while, usually quarterly, I put together a short list of the technologies, innovations that are top of mind right now. And just to go through that list a bit, for me, it's number one, of course, it's still AI. AI is interesting, amazing, scary, a lot of opportunities in there. I've seen actually in March, April, when these things started happening with the COVID crisis, there was a lot of AI push. And then maybe my impression is that this is sobering up a bit. I've seen a lot of over-promising in AI. It's in startups today in AI, it's a bit of a bubble. I can assure you that. I think I saw a number that 40% of all European startups in artificial intelligence don't have an artificial intelligence component in their offering. But we've seen that in mobile, in clean tech, in nanotechnology, in the internet in the past. So no problem, nothing changes in that. The second one, of course, is genetic engineering, where we managed to understand a lot more about this virus through genetic engineering, through genetic mapping and monitoring. And of course, genetics in all its different forms will be able to help us in the future. Third perspective of this, kind of interesting, I think, is that we've seen a lot of investments in virtual reality in the last couple of years, decade, but we don't really see it emerging now. I mean, this is the ultimate opportunity for virtual reality, I think, but it does not really happen. And that's probably because the technology is still quite crude. It's sort of limited. You need all the bandwidth that you might not have all the time. And it is kind of difficult for your senses to understand what's happening when you're totally immersed in this. But I think we'll see a lot more happening in virtual reality and augmented reality in the near future. Last but not least, 5G. We got 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G coming. And despite all the conspiracies that we see that they connect 5G to the COVID virus, I still see that all these online meetings, all the streaming, all the networks that you have, I think we will be soaking up this extra bandwidth and this extra speed in the near future. I can show you that. So there's a couple of things that we're seeing here. And with that, may the future be with you. I'm sure it will. Leave it back to Nicholas, and let's stay in touch. I'll be happy to be in touch with everyone and continue the discussion. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Niklas. We will have you back soon. And I may introduce proudly the third speaker, which is Johan Romfort. And Johan, are you with us? Yes.
Hi.
Johan, and if Niklas switch off the video for a while, he'll come back later. Johan, you are a serial entrepreneur and accelerator lead, mentor and coach with origin from France. You lived in San Francisco and now you're living in Munich, Germany. Currently, you are heading the future of home accelerator of Techstars with a portfolio of 20 plus startups. And soon you're building your own initiative to help the first time entrepreneur CTOs to become greater leaders. You're most welcome, Johan.
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you.
So
Thank
if
you
I
for
post
having
your
me.
question, good to see you there. We have a different hairstyle, you and me.
For sure.
I wish I had yours. Tell us a little bit short who you are and your key beliefs in regards to entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. So I've started my entrepreneurship journey back in 2007, founding and co-founding and being a CTO for a company called Sismic with another French entrepreneur, and which we did in San Francisco. So we raised quite a lot of money. We sold the company in 2012. And since then, I've been involved in many different kinds of capacity in the entrepreneurship world. So I've been a tech evangelist where I kind of help build up the community in Munich, and most recently been coaching and mentoring entrepreneurs through the Techstars program.
What is your key finding by coaching entrepreneurs in this sector? What is your key finding throughout these years of trying to help and,
Right. That evolved quite a lot, I would say, in the recent years, through especially through Techstars, where like the program is very intense, and my my second year was actually quite different from the first one. What I really figured out is that emotions and mental health are like really important, and if you try to fix a company but the founder is actually dysfunctional, it's very hard to get anything done. So I'm really trying to put a lot of emphasis on building trust with the founders. So I generally to do that I like to talk about my own failures, to say like it's okay to talk about that, like you can share as well with us, and yeah, and then especially during COVID time, I think it's even a bigger subject, right? Like startups are really emotional roller coaster, because you have sometimes in the span of a few hours you have like one big win and one big loss, right? And it's very hard to handle for most people to have these constant like ups and downs that can span for years, really. And I think additionally to that, there's also like a huge component of loneliness, right? Like because you're driving this vision that is your vision, and nobody really around you, your friends, your family, like they don't really understand what you're doing. Why don't you take a normal job? Like, why are you doing that to yourself, right? And so now what's adding up in COVID time is that, like this loneliness is actually even more real because you're stuck at home and you're really isolated from the outside world.
Yeah, looking at hands-on at the close relationship you have with your 20 plus startups, how they have reacted and what are the measures taken now during COVID-19?
Well, like, of course, we have pretty much like standard things that we tell founders, right? Like try to save the cash, because otherwise, you're gonna die soon, or your company is gonna die soon. So be as frugal as possible. Focus on the revenues. Don't put so much energy right now into investment if possible, because like it's very, difficult at the moment. And then depending on which space they are in, some are more successful than others. And that has been largely accentuated by COVID.
Yes, and the financing market, mention something on that, because that's what part of the theme, that the venture capital market, the finance markets has been closed. And how do you see that? Are there new business models required?
So I would not say it's closed. I think it decreased significantly, right? Like the other day I looked at the numbers on Crunchbase, which is good source to see the number of deals, and in the last 3 months, there were 50% less investment than a year before at the same time. Then it really depends on the stage of your company as well. So what we see is that, yeah, go ahead.
How to go about then? What it's difficult to do a general thing, but how to go about in finding finance at this moment? Should you postpone it?
You still need to engage with investors. So investors, generally speaking, they don't refuse meetings, right? Like they like to. If there's one thing that investors don't like, is to miss a good deal. So they will always take meetings, and I think it's a good time to build this relationship with them. Actually.
Thank you. Thank you, Johan Romfort. It's short, and you will come back soon. And thank you so much. And I will introduce our fourth speaker, which is Mikael Kretz, based out of South Sweden. Welcome, Mikael.
Thank you. Honored to be here. Lovely.
Mikael, you are a serial entrepreneur from South Sweden, having formed, built, and invested in multiple international companies. Since year 2012, you were co-founder of Q Group, which is a group of consultancy companies that deliver bespoke IT services with 441 specialist consultants in 28 companies in 15 cities in Sweden, Germany, UK, Poland, USA, Netherlands, and Finland. And you are also an investor and owner in startups, in Crunchfish, for instance, which is a mobile touchless technology company. And you're also part of a management university for top management. You don't have time to correct me, so we shoot for the first question.
Let's go. I'm ready.
Mikael, what is your view of successful entrepreneurship?
I think baseline of entrepreneurship is of course finding and doing what you love and have passion for and make it grow. I mean that's the baseline, I would say, of entrepreneurship. And of course success is like a relative thing, because it depends on what type of business you're in. If you're having an airline or a restaurant, it's a big difference. But I think the core of it is doing what you love and make it grow. Yeah.
Realizing the dream with some growth involved.
Absolutely.
And if we look upon the COVID-19 situation, what is your take on that? Maybe you can apply it on what you did in Q Group, and maybe comment on what happened in the startups that you're involved as an owner.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I would say it's not my first rodeo, so to speak. It's there have been many other times since I started my first company year 2000. Actually in a situation like COVID-19, but within IT. So that was when the IT bubble burst. So then I started the company. So connected with COVID-19, it would be like starting an airline right now. So it's like that was my first one. And then of course the bank crash, and we had in Sweden when the iPhone came out, we have the telecom market went really downhill in Sweden. So this is the fourth time actually. So
what is the method of handling black swans like this?
Yeah,
how actually, did you handle it?
Yeah, I could tell you, but I like one word from Mike Tyson, actually really good. when he said like, yeah, everybody got a strategy when they got up in the ring, you know, and start to fight me. But as soon as I hit them in the face, they have no idea what. So you know, you could plan and have whatever strategy you want, but what was really important is that you are up on your toes and be really agile and be ready to move and act, you know, and not be sitting inside and have too much planning. Be outside, be actively, be with your clients, try to find new ways. It's super important to yeah, normally everybody talks about, oh, you have to cut cost. Yeah, that's right, you have to think about the cost, of course, but maybe even more important is to reallocate the money, you know, from one spending side of the company into sales. In particular this situation, you know, you really need to have the best sales team on board in this situation. You know, you need to have agile people, innovative people that comes up with idea how to make business running in this time of time. So, and what we have done in Q Group, actually, since the experience, not particularly around COVID-19, but to handling black swans overall. So what we have done there is to really focus on having a lot of different clients in a lot of different areas of expertise, not only, you know, be satisfied with growth within one or two or three large organizations. We rather have many companies with not so many people working at them, actually. So that's my take, or success, why we are pretty thriving right now and try to find new opportunities. So signed 2 new CSOs during COVID-19 and 1 new sales person. So, you know, leaning forward and take the next step is super important, to be focused on invoicing and get the money in. But be careful with the clients in this type of times, you know, so they don't go bust and you don't get paid for your work. So that's another take on it.
So what is the thing you tell the salespeople in Q Group, and maybe the sales indirectly through the investments that you have to the sales forces there? What is the key message?
Yeah, you know, everybody has to step up the game. You know, you always have, it's like running a marathon. You always have like 10% more in your body. You know, you can push yourself a little bit harder, and times like this, you have to push yourself a little bit harder, you know. So everybody has to, instead of doing you know, 1 call, you have to do 2 calls. You know, you have to step up to the times. Yeah, more energy. More energy.
That's great. And you can stay, Mikael, because I would like to introduce the whole panel again, so we can have a group discussion here on what we found most interesting in each other's presentation. And I also have a line of questions from the audience. Thank you, the audience. But I will start with Johan. What question or input do you have regards to the other panelists, and who did you pick?
I picked Shahrazad. And my question would be, when you're a startup, how can you use media? Like, what I see with my startup is that they clearly have like no clue about, you know, how to utilize media and how to, you know, get to know journalists and things like that. So how to spin up a story. So what would be your advice on that, Shahrazad?
My advice is actually to create news. And you can create news. Startups have more data than they can imagine, and journalists and the media is always very interested to have data, to have trends, to have information. So it's a lot about actually knowing how to use some of the work you're doing and some of the data you're working on, and getting that to the journalists and to the right medium. That's also very key, to the right audience. So a lot, not trying to spin journalists, but really coming up with data points and a story held by data that today remains the best way.
Thank you. And some question from the rest of you in regards to some of the panelists. Just raise your hand physically so I can see, because we have a lot of questions otherwise from the audience. So first would be A startup using cyber learning to create science remote labs in partnership with Microsoft. How can we contact founders to apply for funds? What is your answer to that? They actually have funds, so they want to understand how and they can convince and get the startups to use that funds. What would you say to that question? No one have an answer to that? It was a difficult start then in this panel, yeah?
I think, Niklas, is that your area?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Niklas Bergman, what do you say? How would you do that if you were that person with that challenge?
You mean the first question up there?
No, it's another. I have a startup using cyber learning to create science remote labs in partnership with Microsoft. How can we contact founders to apply for funds?
I mean, that is, it is difficult. I mean, there's so much noise out there now. I mean, one suggestion would be to maybe get in touch with some of like incubators, Techstars maybe, where you actually have a lot of founders involved. The networking events, there are some governmental networking events that are more neutral than some of the more commercial ones. So finding areas where you could meet up with founders in different ways, I think that's one way to do it.
Thank you. Some question to.
I could elaborate on that one as well. In terms of when I have done my all of my startups, actually, I try to work not with the VC or funds, but more private equity. People that really could believe in you and keep with you for a longer time because they like you and your idea and they believe in you. So that's my 5 cents on that.
So,
and I think another way to do that would be to build community, right? It's a great way to kind of gather interest. So building a community around the topic and trying to find like a few speakers, doing some events, doing a bit of content marketing as well can be a good idea.
I have another question from the audience actually. Is it possible to be an entrepreneur without raising funds?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, that's actually that's the traditional way of being an entrepreneur. That's what being an entrepreneur is. Everything else is could be entrepreneurship, but it also could be some kind of wish of being an entrepreneur. Fundraising is not a business model in itself. Sales is a business model, sort of.
Any comments?
I fully agree. That is probably the healthiest way to start a company, is to worry about about sales and your customer and not about and funds. I fully agree.
And then the other end, can you recommend can you recommend us an active investor for seed stage startup in Europe? That's on the other end.
Techstars in Munich, I think, is probably the best one out there. Just to put in a bit of perspective, I mean, there are, of course, a lot of companies that, I mean, I've been involved in a lot of research-based innovations and companies, and of course, you need investments, you need venture capital to get that started, to get the research out of the gate. But in general, I think sometimes, especially in a booming economy that we had in the last decade, not the last quarter, but the last decade, a lot of focus is on raising funds, getting a nice office, getting the logo in place, and not actually working on sales. So I think more sales oriented in all startups. I think that's where we should head.
And we have actually a question in regards to a startup in Iran. A question on, it's a health tourism startup. Our product is set, it's made, and we are in the process of attracting capital or partners to cooperate. What would you say, all of you, in regards to that? Maybe Shahrazad or anyone. How do you
Joker, as we say in French, joker, I don't know.
Any input from the panel? In general, then, how do you, as a startup, seek cooperations and partnerships? What have you done in your entrepreneurship, all of you, in order to succeed with that?
Use this one a lot. You have to phone, you have to connect, you don't be afraid to call. That's the first thing, you know, lift the phone and talk to people. That's the only way, you know, and then you're going to network your way into the right epicenter of where you want to go, but you need to circle the prey. That's how it is.
And any comment?
You need to,
yes,
yeah, and you probably need also to build a lot of resilience around that, because you're going to get a lot of no, which don't mean anything. But the most important part is really to keep on going, even when you just hear negative feedback. Of course, you should take the negative feedback into account, but not all the time. You need to go on.
And what did you think of in regards to the other panelists, all of you, maybe an input or a question when they presented? What do you say? Do you have some kind of thing that popped up that you thought of?
Yeah, I really like the focus on people you had there, Johan, in terms of cultivating the know-how and the feeling of the person, because account just an idea. If it's not executed by people that are motivated and love what they do, the idea going to be forgotten about. So people is the key issue, and focus. Good there, I think.
Sure.
And some last words from all of you. This is running very fast. That's probably part of our new world of digital meetings. I want all of you to stay maybe 20, 30 seconds. What are your last word in regards to our 1,000 startups that are listening now?
Never give up.
I think.
Okay, Sherazade, ladies first. You start.
Never give up.
Good, that was short. Never give up. Johan, what do you say?
I would say that it's a great time to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of things to rethink, rebuild, and I think the entrepreneurs will drive also the regrowth of the economy through job creation. So yes, don't give up.
And what do Niklas say?
No, actually, some more of the same. I think we're in a situation where it's been really, really stressful and painful for a lot of people, entrepreneurs, employees. But this will not go on forever. I mean, we see some opening up of the economies, and I have great trust in the future, and think that we will be seeing some very, very interesting things coming out on the other side of this crisis, actually.
And Mikael, last words from you.
I'm going to give you 3 words. Energy, energy, energy. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much. And from me, I would say Yasmin is coming up. Thank you, Yasmin. I just want to say that remember the role of an entrepreneur. That's the person that creates something that is necessary for the rest of our globe population. And even now, more than ever, you are needed. So keep on fighting, working focused, pushing, lifting the telephone, connecting. And hopefully you that listen, you will be able to create a new world that will be sound and to the benefit of all. So by that, I thank you, the whole panel.